Agnes Miller had been preparing for another quiet Christmas Eve in her suburban neighborhood, just like she had done for decades. But when a young black girl appeared on her porch, wearing nothing but a thin, tattered pink dress in the freezing December air, something about the child's distended belly and fearful eyes made her blood run cold. What Agnes would uncover in the next few hours would shake her comfortable suburban world forever and change both their lives in ways she never could have imagined. Before we dive in, comment below where you're watching or listening from today, and if you like this shocking story, don't forget to subscribe. The crisp December air nipped at Agnes's cheeks as she stepped out of her car, arms full of grocery bags. Glancing at the clock on her phone, she saw it was 1 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The quaint suburban neighborhood of Newtown buzzed with festive energy. Twinkling lights decorated the houses, casting colorful reflections on the fresh blanket of snow. Inflatable Santas and snowmen swayed in the chilly breeze, adding to the holiday cheer. Agnes, an elderly woman with silver hair and warm, kind eyes, felt a pang of loneliness as she checked her messages, hoping for a reply from her children about visiting this year. As she made her way up the driveway, her boots crunching in the snow, she couldn't shake the bittersweet reminder that her family had drifted apart over the years, and the holidays only seemed to deepen that feeling of emptiness. As she fumbled with her keys, a flash of movement caught her eye. Across the street, a young black girl in a pink dress was crossing the road. Agnes paused, watching as the child, no more than 8 or 9 years old, walked with purpose towards her neighbor's house. The girl's clothes were ragged, a stark contrast to her braided hair. There was something about her demeanor that made Agnes uneasy. From her vantage point, Agnes observed as the girl approached her neighbor's trash bin. With a quick glance around, the child lifted the lid and reached inside, pulling out a dark plastic bag with all her might. The girl's movements were furtive, her eyes darting nervously as she clutched her prize. A pang of concern tightened in Agnes's chest. Why was this child alone on Christmas Eve, wearing only a thin pink dress? And, more troubling, why was she rummaging through the trash? The girl's actions hinted at desperation, a stark contrast to the warmth and security usually found in their cozy neighborhood. As the child scurried away, disappearing down the street with her scavenged bag, Agnes shook herself from her reverie. She set her bags down by the mailbox and checked inside, rifling through the usual assortment of bills, a magazine and a postcard. Among the envelopes, a folded piece of paper caught her attention. It wasn't sealed or addressed, just a simple sheet tucked in with the rest of the mail. Curiosity piqued, but Agnes set it aside for later inspection. She gathered her groceries and made her way to the front door, her mind still preoccupied with the strange sight she had witnessed. Before entering her home, Agnes paused again, her gaze drawn to her own trash can. A nagging thought made her wonder if the girl had visited her bin as well. But a quick check revealed her trash undisturbed, leaving Agnes with more questions than answers as she finally stepped inside. The warmth of her home a stark contrast to the chill of uncertainty that had settled over her. The familiar scent of pine and cinnamon greeted Agnes as she crossed the threshold, momentarily pushing the strange encounter from her mind. She made her way to the kitchen, setting the grocery bags on the counter with a soft grunt. The weight of age seemed heavier today, perhaps burdened by the unsettling sight she had witnessed. Agnes placed the envelopes on the dining table, her fingers hesitating on the mysterious folded page resting among them. She shook her head, pushing the thought aside with a silent promise to read it later. It was already past midday, and she needed to start preparations for the family dinner, just in case her children decided to come this year. Moving to the sink, she washed her hands, savoring the comforting warmth of the water against her skin. "Rowan," she called out, her voice echoing through the house. "Rowan, I'm back from the market." The sound of the back door opening and closing answered her call. Rowan, Agnes's husband of 45 years, ambled into the kitchen. The faint smell of cigarette smoke clung to his cardigan, and a half-empty beer bottle dangled from his fingers. "How was the market?" Rowan asked, his voice gruff but tinged with affection. Agnes smiled, grateful for the familiar routine. Busy as always on Christmas Eve, I managed to get everything we need, though. She paused, considering their dinner plans. What do you think about a glazed leg ham for dinner when the family comes? Rowan nodded approvingly. Sounds perfect. The kids always love your ham. Agnes busied herself with unpacking the groceries, her mind drifting back to the girl she had seen. Rowan, she began hesitantly, did you happen to see a little girl wandering around the neighborhood earlier? A young black girl all alone? Rowan's brow furrowed. Can't say that I have. Why do you ask? Agnes recounted what she had witnessed, describing the girl's ragged appearance and her actions at the neighbor's trash bin. As she spoke, she could see Rowan's expression shifting from curiosity to dismissal. Ah, don't worry about it, Agnes, he said, waving his hand. Probably just some kid who wandered off. You know how they are. Besides, one of those nosy neighbors will sort it out if there's really a problem. Agnes felt a flicker of irritation at Rowan's cavalier attitude. But she was going through the trash, Rowan. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Rowan shrugged, taking another swig of his beer. Kids do all sorts of strange things, no use getting worked up over it. Agnes pressed her lips together, biting back a retort. She knew pushing the issue would only lead to an argument, and she didn't want to sour the mood before their children arrived. Still, she couldn't shake the image of the girl from her mind. I suppose you're right, she conceded, though her tone suggested otherwise. I should focus on getting dinner ready. The kids should be here by 4, just like last year. As Agnes turned back to her groceries, she tried to push the image of the girl away from her thoughts. But even as she began to prepare the ham, she found her eyes drifting to the window, half expecting to see the mysterious child once more. The kitchen soon filled with the warm, comforting sense of Christmas as Agnes set about preparing the leg ham. She had mixed her glaze made of maple syrup, brown sugar, nutmeg, and cinnamon in a separate bowl, and now she was scoring the rind of the leg ham, her hands moving with the practiced ease of someone who had performed this ritual many times before. As she worked, her mind wandered to Christmas Eve's past, when the house had been filled with her children's chatters and the pitter-patter of grandchildren's feet. Remember when Sarah was little, and she insisted on helping with the ham? Agnes called out to Rowan, who had settled into his favorite armchair in the living room. She ended up covered head to toe in glaze. A chuckle drifted in from the other room. How could I forget? Took us hours to get it out of her hair. Agnes smiled at the memory, but it was tinged with a hint of sadness. Those days seemed so long ago now. Her 3 children had grown up, moved away, and started families of their own. The 6 grandchildren were getting older too, their visits becoming less frequent as their lives filled with school, friends, and activities. Agnes, bring me another bottle of beer, will you? His voice interrupted her chain of nostalgia. Agnes sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. Coming, but this should be your last one before everyone arrives, okay? But Rowan never answered. She retrieved a beer from the fridge anyway and brought it to him, who accepted it with a grunt of thanks. As she turned to head back to the kitchen, movement outside the window caught her eye. Agnes froze, her heart skipping a beat. There, across the street, was the girl she had seen earlier. The child was heading straight for Agnes's trash bin. Without thinking, Agnes quickly wiped her hands and rushed to the door. I'll be right back, she called to Rowan, who merely grunted in response, too engrossed in his television program to notice her urgency. Agnes stepped out onto the porch, her gaze settling on the girl. Now that she was this close, she could see the girl's belly bulging, almost as if she were pregnant. But how could that be? The child hadn't even reached the age. She watched as the girl lifted the bin lid, reaching inside, her small frame barely tall enough to peer over the edge. Hello there, Agnes called out, trying to keep her voice gentle and non-threatening as she climbed down a few steps. The girl's reaction was immediate. She jerked back from the bin as if burned, her eyes wide with fear. In her haste to retreat, she knocked over the bin, spilling the trash bag and its contents onto the street. A dark liquid, likely remnants from a discarded container, splashed across the pavement and the girl's shoes. "Oh, sweetheart, it's okay," Agnes said, taking a step forward. But it was too late. The girl had already turned and was running down the street, her braids bouncing against her back as she fled. Agnes sighed, her heart heavy as she watched the child disappear around a corner. She made her way to the overturned bin, kneeling despite the protest of her aging joints. As she began to clean up the mess, she caught a glimpse of her little figure from the corner of her eye. There, peeking out from behind a streetlight, was the girl. She was watching Agnes with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, her body tense and ready to bolt at any moment. "It's all right," Agnes called out softly. "I'm not angry. Are you hungry? I could get you something to eat." But her words seemed to spook the child once more. In the blink of an eye, the girl vanished, leaving Agnes alone with her thoughts and a bin full of scattered trash. Agnes tidied up the mess, replacing the old trash bag with a fresh one. When she finished, she headed back inside, her mind swirling with questions and concerns as she washed her hands. Entering the living room, she found Rowan still slouched in his armchair, another empty beer bottle resting on the side table. "Rowan," she began, her voice tight with worry, "what did I say about the last bottle?" She clicked her tongue. "And you know what? That girl I saw earlier was just outside going through our trash." "What girl?" Rowan looked up, his expression a mixture of confusion and mild irritation. "Oh, the one you mentioned before?" Agnes nodded, wringing her hands. "Yes, she was right there, and when I tried to talk to her, she ran off. She looked so scared, Rowan, and hungry. I think she might be in trouble." Rowan's response was dismissive, his words slightly slurred from the alcohol. "Agnes, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. So what if some kid was poking around the trash, probably just looking for bottles to turn in for change?" But Rowan, she spilled trash all over herself when she ran away. Her feet were covered in it. This elicited a chuckle from Rowan, which only served to fuel Agnes's frustration. "Well, that's what happens when you mess with trash bins. Look, if it bothers you so much, just lock the bin." Agnes felt her patience wearing thin. "We can't lock the bin, Rowan. The trash collectors won't be able to empty it if we do. Besides, that's not the point. There's a child out there who needs help." Rowan waved his hand dismissively. "You're always trying to fix everyone's problems, Agnes. Sometimes you need to let things be. Now, how about that ham? Have you put it in the oven?" Realizing she wasn't going to get anywhere with Rowan, Agnes retreated to the kitchen, her heart heavy. She returned to her dinner preparations, but her movements were mechanical, her mind elsewhere. As she glazed the ham and prepared the baking dish with apple cider, Agnes found herself constantly glancing out the kitchen window. She slid the leg ham inside the oven and set the timer for 20 minutes. In the meantime, she took herself to do the chores. She swept the house, wiped down the furniture, and set the dining table. As she worked, her gaze drifted to the window, and her heart leaped into her throat when she noticed the same girl running barefoot through the snow, her small feet leaving tiny imprints in the white blanket covering the ground. The girl is moving quickly, looking over her shoulder in fear. The child's thin arms were wrapped tightly around herself, probably from cold. The oven timer rang just in time. She quickly silenced it, setting it for an additional 20 minutes, noting to herself that she'd baste the ham later, once she understood what was happening with the girl outside. Without hesitation, Agnes put the ham back in the oven and hurried outside. Agnes followed the girl's gaze over her shoulder and saw a man standing on the porch of a house down the street. He's red-faced and angry, shouting at her and making shooing motions with his hands. "Get out of here, you little rascal," his voice carried through the quiet neighborhood. "Don't let me catch you digging through our trash again." "Wait!" Agnes called out as she approached the gate, but just like before, the girl was spooked at the sound of her voice. This time, however, Agnes didn't stop. She chased the girl, her concern overriding her usual caution. She rounded several corners, always keeping the child just in sight. As she entered a part of the neighborhood she rarely visited, Agnes found herself in front of a shabby camper park. There, among a pile of trash bags, stood the girl. Her discarded shoes lay nearby, soaked in what Agnes assumed was the same trash juice from earlier. The sight broke Agnes's heart. As she cautiously approached, trying to find the right words to comfort the child, movement from behind a nearby camper van caught her attention. A woman, perhaps 10 years younger than Agnes, stumbled into view, followed closely by a much younger man. They were clearly intoxicated, caught up in a passionate embrace, and completely oblivious to her presence. Agnes's stomach churned as she realized the implications of what she was seeing. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, determined to understand the situation and find a way to help. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm concerned about this little girl. Is she with you?" The woman broke away from her companion, her eyes narrowing as she focused on Agnes. "Who the hell are you?" she slurred, her words thick with alcohol. Agnes stood her ground, though her heart was racing. "My name is Agnes. I live a few streets over in that neighborhood." She pointed to the direction where she came. "I've seen this girl going through trash bins in our neighborhood, and I'm worried about her. Is she your daughter?" The woman's face contorted into a sneer. "What's it to you? Mind your own damn business, lady." Agnes felt a surge of anger at the woman's dismissive attitude. "I'm trying to help. This child was digging through trash, and now she's standing here barefoot. Her feet were turning blue, and look at her belly. Is she sick? Surely you can see why I'm concerned." The man, who had been silent until now, stepped forward menacingly. "You heard her. Get lost, Grandma. This ain't your problem." Agnes stood her ground, her gaze shifting between the hostile adults and the silent, wide-eyed child. She knew she couldn't leave, not without doing something to help. Agnes's heart raced, acutely aware of the hostility radiating from the couple before her. The little girl remained silent, her eyes darting between Agnes and the adults, fear evident in her posture. "Look," Agnes began, trying to keep her voice calm and reasonable, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just concerned about the child's welfare. She's been going through trash bins in our neighborhood, and now she's here without proper clothing. Can we please talk about this?" The woman, who Agnes assumed must be the girl's mother, let out a harsh laugh. "Talk about what? You come here sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, and now you want to chat? Get lost, lady." Agnes felt her frustration mounting, but she forced herself to remain composed. "I understand you might be going through a difficult time, but surely you can see that this situation isn't right for a child. Is there someone I can call to help? A family member, perhaps? I also have warm clothes for her size back in my place. Just a few minutes walk down that neighborhood." The man stepped forward, his stance aggressive. "You deaf or something? We told you to mind your own business. Now get out of here before things get ugly." Agnes turned her attention to the girl, who had edged closer during their exchange. "Sweetheart, what's your name? Are you hungry? I could bring you some food and a warm jacket if you'd like." She reached out, gently placing a hand on the girl's belly, trying to understand. The girl was definitely not pregnant at that age, and it didn't feel like a tumor. Before the child could respond, her mother intervened. "Her name's Maya, and she's fine. We don't need your help or your pity. Get your hand off of her." Maya's eyes lit up at the mention of food, but a sharp look from her mother silenced any response she might have given. She stepped a few steps back. "That's enough," the woman snapped. "Maya, get over here, now!" As Maya reluctantly obeyed, Agnes felt a surge of desperation. She couldn't just walk away, leaving this child in such a precarious situation. But what could she do? "Please," Agnes tried one last time, addressing the mother directly. "I'm not judging you, I just want to help. A child shouldn't be digging through trash for food or standing barefoot in the cold. Please let me help." She handed out a few notes from her wallet to Maya, and she accepted. The man standing beside the mother laughed in a thick, gravelly voice. "You know that's for your mom and I, don't you, Maya?" For a moment, something flickered in the child's eyes, a hint of fear or shame perhaps, or regret for accepting the money. "Please, ma'am, just go," she said in her thin, dry voice. "I'm cold and I need to go inside the van for warmth. The woman released a cold smoke from her breath. "You hear the child. Leave us alone and forget you ever saw us. That's what's best for everyone." "Let's go, Meta," said the man, touching her shoulder and rubbing the back of her neck. He grabbed Maya's wrist and pulled her inside. The man gave Agnes one last menacing glare before slamming the door shut, with a finality that echoed through the quiet campground. Agnes felt tears freezing at the corners of her eyes as she stood there for a moment, her mind reeling. She had come here hoping to help, but had she made the situation worse? As she slowly turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of Maya's face through the van's grimy window. It's the look of silent pleading. With a heavy heart, Agnes began the walk back to her house. She knew she couldn't leave things as they were, but what could she do? As she trudged home, her mind raced with possibilities, each seeming more impossible than the last. One thing was certain. Her quiet Christmas Eve had taken a turn she never could have anticipated. The festive decorations adorning the houses she passed seemed to mock her, their cheerful lights a stark contrast to the darkness she had just encountered. As she approached her front door, the shrill sound of the kitchen timer pierced through her troubled thoughts. With a start, Agnes realized she had left the ham in the oven too long. She hurried inside, the warmth of her home feeling almost suffocating after the chill of her recent encounter. "Agnes," Rowan's voice, tinged with irritation, greeted her as she entered. He was standing in the kitchen, frowning at the beeping timer. "Where the hell have you been? The oven's been going off for ages and the ham's drying up." Agnes moved quickly to silence the timer and tend to the ham, her hands trembling slightly as she grabbed the mitts and opened the oven door. "I'm sorry, Rowan. I got distracted." Rowan's frown deepened as he watched her, his stance slightly swaying, cheeks flushed, a clear sign he'd had too much beer today. "Distracted? By what? Don't tell me you were off chasing that girl." Agnes felt a flare of anger rising in her chest at his dismissive tone, but she bit back a sharp retort. Instead, she focused on basting the ham, trying to gather her thoughts. "Rowan, it's worse than we thought. That little girl, her name's Maya. She's living in a camper van with her mother and some man. They're drunk, and they don't seem to care about her at all." Rowan let out a derisive snort. "And how exactly do you know all this? Don't tell me you followed her." "I did," Agnes admitted, turning to face her husband. "I had to, Rowan. You should have seen her. She was barefoot, cold in her thin layer of clothing, and scared. I couldn't just ignore it." "Good Lord, Agnes," Rowan exploded, his words slightly slurred. "When are you going to learn to mind your own business? You can't save every stray that crosses your path. It's Christmas Eve, for God's sake. We should be preparing for our family, not getting mixed up in some stranger's mess." Agnes felt tears pricking at her eyes, a mixture of frustration and disappointment welling up inside her. "Our family. Rowan, our children haven't called us this entire year. They're too busy with their own lives, and now there's a child out there who needs help, and you want me to just ignore it?" Rowan's face darkened. "Don't you dare bring our kids into this. They're successful. They have their own families." "I am proud of them," Agnes shot back, "but that doesn't change the fact that we're alone on Christmas Eve, and there's a little girl out there who needs help. How can you be so callous?" "Callous?" Rowan's voice rose. "I'm being realistic, Agnes. You don't know anything about these people. For all you know, they could be dangerous. You could have gotten yourself hurt or worse, and for what? Some kid you don't even know." Agnes turned away, unable to look at her husband's angry face any longer. She busied herself with the ham, fighting back tears. "I know enough to see a child in need, Rowan, and I can't just turn my back on that. I won't." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the soft sizzle of the ham caramelizing in the oven. Agnes could feel Rowan's eyes on her back, but she didn't turn around. She couldn't bear to see the disappointment, the anger in his eyes. After what felt like an eternity, Rowan spoke again, his voice low and tired. "Do what you want, Agnes. You always do anyway. Just don't expect me to clean up the mess when this all goes south." With that, he turned and left the kitchen, the sound of his heavy footsteps retreating to the living room, echoing in Agnes's ears. She stood there for a long moment, her hands gripping the edge of the counter, trying to steady herself. As she fought to regain her composure, her eyes fell on the folded piece of paper she had found in the mailbox earlier on the kitchen table. She reached for it, suddenly desperate for any distraction from the weight of her emotions. Unfolding the paper, Agnes felt her heart stop as she read the childish scrawl, "Help, I need food, hungry, give money and put in trash." The words blurred as tears filled Agnes's eyes. She knew without a doubt that this note was from Maya. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This child had been crying out for help right under their noses, and they had almost missed it entirely. At that moment, standing alone in her kitchen with the evidence of Maya's desperation in her hands, Agnes made a decision. She couldn't ignore this. No matter what Rowan said, no matter how difficult it might be, she had to find a way to help Maya. The question was, how? The sweet scent of the ham filled the air as she basted the meat with cider and brushed another coat of maple glaze syrup over its surface. The late afternoon sun had cast long shadows across the kitchen floor. The house was quiet, save for the occasional clink of Rowan's beer bottle from the living room. The tension between them hung heavy in the air, neither willing to break the uneasy silence that had settled after their argument. Agnes's phone buzzed suddenly in her pocket, startling her from her thoughts about Maya's notes. She reached for it, expecting perhaps a last-minute confirmation that her children were on the way to her house. Instead, she found herself staring at a group message that made her heart sink. "Mom, Dad," the message began, "we've got some news. We've decided to do something different this year for Christmas. We've booked a last-minute trip abroad. We're so excited for this family adventure. We'll miss you both, of course, but we'll call on Christmas Day to catch up. Love you." Agnes read the message once, twice, 3 times, each time feeling the weight of disappointment settle more heavily on her shoulders. She looked up, catching Rowan's eye as she entered the living room. "What is it?" he asked, noticing her expression. Wordlessly, Agnes handed him the phone. She watched as he read the message, his face a mixture of emotions, surprise, hurt, and finally a resigned acceptance that made Agnes's heart ached. "Well," Rowan said after a moment, his voice gruff, "I suppose we should be happy for them. It's good they can afford such luxuries." Agnes detected a hint of bitterness in his tone, but she was too overwhelmed by her own emotions to address it. "But it's Christmas," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We always spend Christmas together." Rowan shrugged, handing the phone back to her. "Times change, Agnes. The kids have their own lives now. We can't expect them to always put us first." His words, though likely meant to be comforting, only served to deepen Agnes's sense of isolation. She looked around the room, taking in the decorated tree, the stockings hung with care, the piles of wrapped gifts that would now sit unopened. All the preparations, all the excitement, now seemed hollow and meaningless. As the reality of their situation sank in, Agnes felt a surge of emotion she couldn't quite name. It wasn't just sadness or disappointment. It was something more, a restless energy that demanded action. Her eyes fell on Maya's note on the table, and suddenly she knew what she had to do. With a newfound determination, Agnes stood up. "Rowan," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I'm going upstairs for a bit. I need to think." Rowan nodded absently, already reaching for another beer. Sure, take your time." Agnes climbed the stairs, her mind racing with possibilities. She entered what had once been the playroom for her grandchildren, now a storage space for memories and forgotten toys. Opening a large chest, she began to sort through its contents, setting aside plush animals, dolls, and action figures that her grandchildren had long outgrown. Next, she moved to the wardrobe, pulling out gently worn dresses and warm clothes that had once belonged to her granddaughters. She selected items she thought might fit Maya, adding a cozy sweater and a small winter jacket to the pile. As she worked, Agnes felt a sense of purpose washing over her. She might not be able to change her own family's plans, but she could make a difference in Maya's life. She could offer this child a glimpse of the warmth and care that every child deserved, especially at Christmas. Gathering the toys and clothes, Agnes headed back downstairs. In the kitchen, she collected non-perishable food items, packaged snacks, fruit cups, small bottles of juice, anything a child could easily eat without preparation. She found a cardboard box in the garage and began carefully packing it with her collected items. As she worked, she remembered Maya's note and its strange request. With a moment's hesitation, she retrieved some cash from her wallet, placed it in an envelope and slipped it inside the folded note. With a determined sigh, she carried the box downstairs and out to the front yard, placing it near their trash bin. She had marked the box with large, bold letters spelling "rubbish," hoping it would remain undisturbed until Maya found it, and made sure that the box was sealed carefully, leaving the sides slightly open for easy access. As Agnes re-entered the house, brushing off a few snowflakes that had settled on her sweater, Rowan's voice called out from the dining room. "Agnes? I'm getting hungry. Can we have that ham now?" Agnes sighed, realizing how much time had passed. "Just a moment, Rowan," Agnes replied, making her way to the kitchen. "I'll check on it now." She opened the oven, the rich aroma of the glazed ham filling the air. She served 2 portions for her and Rowan. Now, without her children and grandchildren, the house felt empty, and the whole leg seemed too big for just the 2 of them. They ate their early dinner in near silence, and when she wrapped up the table and washed the dishes, Agnes found herself staring at the box she had placed by the trash bin. She wondered if the girl would return after the earlier incident, if she would find the box before other children or the dump truck came. The house was eerily quiet, save for the soft snoring coming from Rowan, who had fallen asleep in his armchair after his early dinner and 6th bottle of beer. Just as Agnes was about to turn away, a small figure caught her eye. Her heart leaped as she recognized Maya, approaching the trash bin with the same cautious movements she had observed earlier. The girl was still wearing the same clothes, now visibly damp and dirty, wholly unsuitable for the chilly December night. Her feet were now covered in shoes, though the stains from the trash juice earlier had left its mark. Agnes watched, barely breathing as Maya knelt by the box. The girl's hands stiffened by cold as she opened it, her movements hesitant yet desperate. Agnes's heart ached as she saw Maya's eyes widen at the sight of the toys and clothes. To Agnes's surprise and dismay, Maya quickly grabbed the envelope containing the cash. The girl clutched it tightly, a look of quiet relief washing over her face. But what truly broke Agnes's heart was watching Maya deliberately leave behind the toys, clothes and food she had so carefully packed. As Maya stood up, cash envelope clutched to her chest, she cast a longing glance at the winter jacket and sweater. For a moment, it seemed she might reach for them, but then she shook her head as if reminding herself of some unspoken rule. With one last look around, Maya turned and began to walk away. Agnes felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had hoped that Maya might find some happiness in the toys and some warmth in the clothes, but the girl's actions spoke of a child forced to grow up too fast, prioritizing survival over any form of childhood pleasure. Lost in her thoughts, Agnes didn't hear Rowan approaching until he spoke, his words slightly slurred from alcohol. "What are you looking at?" Agnes jumped, turning to face her husband. Before she could respond, Rowan had joined her at the window, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Maya retreating down the street. "That her?" he asked, his tone laced with disdain. "The one you've been fussing about all day?" Agnes nodded, her voice caught in her throat. Rowan scoffed, shaking his head. "Look at her, digging through our trash. These people always scrounging around where they don't belong, probably casing the neighborhood, looking for houses to rob." The casual cruelty of Rowan's words hit Agnes like a physical blow. She turned to him, anger flaring in her chest. "How can you say that? She's just a child, Rowan, a hungry, desperate child." Rowan rolled his eyes. "You're always too soft on people, Agnes. Not everyone deserves your kindness, you know. Some folks are just trouble, plain and simple." "Trouble," Agnes repeated, her voice rising. "That trouble is a little girl who's cold and hungry on Christmas Eve. How can you be so heartless?" Rowan's face darkened. "Heartless? I'm being realistic. You don't know anything about her or her family. For all you know, they could be dangerous criminals." "She's a child," Agnes exclaimed, her patience finally snapping. "What kind of person looks at a hungry child and sees a criminal?" The harshness of her words seemed to penetrate Rowan's alcohol-induced haze. He blinked, taken aback by her outburst. For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face, but it was quickly replaced by defensive anger. "Fine," he muttered, turning away. "You want to waste your time on some stranger's kid, go ahead. Just don't come crying to me when it all blows up in your face." As Rowan stumbled back to his armchair and turned on the TV, Agnes felt a surge of determination. Without a second thought, she grabbed a plate and quickly loaded it with a generous portion of the ham she had prepared earlier, along with some sides. Taking a deep breath, Agnes opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The cold air bit at her skin, but she barely noticed, her eyes scanning the street for any sign of Maya. "Maya?" she called out, her voice carrying in the quiet night. "Maya, sweetheart, are you there?" For a long moment there was no response. Then, almost imperceptibly, a small figure emerged from the shadows. Maya stood at the edge of the lawn, her body tense, ready to flee at any moment. Agnes's heart ached at the sight of the girl's wary posture. She held out the plate, her voice gentle and reassuring. "It's okay, Maya. I'm not going to hurt you. I have some food here if you're hungry. Would you like to come in and eat with me?" Maya hesitated, her eyes darting between Agnes and the plate of food. The internal struggle was visible on her young face, the fear of trusting a stranger warring with the gnawing hunger that Agnes could only imagine. After what felt like an eternity, Maya took a tentative step forward, then another. Agnes remained still, not wanting to startle the girl. Finally, Maya reached the porch steps, her small frame shivering in the cold night air. "That's it, sweetheart," Agnes encouraged softly. "Come in, it's warmer inside." As Maya climbed the steps, Agnes could see the toll that neglect had taken on the child. Her clothes were dirty, her shoes worn through, and now she had bruises on her face. Despite the cold, she wore no coat, and her arms were wrapped tightly around her thin body. Agnes gestured to let her in, setting the plate on the dining table and guiding her to her seat. "Here you go, Maya. Eat as much as you like." Maya's eyes widened at the sight of the food. She glanced at Agnes as if seeking permission before beginning to eat. The speed and desperation with which she consumed the meal broke Agnes's heart all over again. As Maya ate, Agnes gently tried to engage her in conversation. "Maya, sweetheart, can you tell me about the woman I saw earlier? Is she really your mother?" Maya paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. She nodded slowly, her eyes downcast. "Yeah, that's my mom. Her name's Meta." "And the man with her?" Agnes pressed gently. "That's her boyfriend, Darius," Maya replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They don't really care about me." Agnes felt a lump forming in her throat. "Oh, Maya," she breathed, fighting back tears. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. What about your father? Is he around?" Maya shook her head, her lower lip trembling. "No, he left a long time ago to the army. I miss him." As Maya continued to eat, Agnes's mind raced. The situation was even worse than she had feared. This child wasn't just neglected, she was actively being pushed away by the very people who should have been protecting her. "Maya," Agnes said softly, "you must be cold. Would you like to take a bath and warm up? We have hot water and some clean clothes that might fit you." Maya looked up, hope and fear warring in her eyes. For a moment it seemed she might accept the offer, but then she shook her head, glancing nervously down the street. "I can't," she whispered. "Mom and Darius, they'd be mad if I went with you." Before Agnes could respond, a gruff voice called out from inside the house. "Agnes, what the hell are you doing? Now you let her in our house?" Maya startled at the sound, nearly dropping her plate. Agnes turned to see Rowan standing in the doorway, his face a mask of irritation. "Rowan, please," Agnes began. "I told you to leave this alone," he growled. "Are you out of your mind?" Maya scrambled to her feet, terror evident in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'll go." "No, Maya, wait," Agnes called. Her grip clenched her wrist. Maya looked at her hand with a terrified look, and Agnes realized she had acted over her head. She let go of Maya's hand, but before the girl could dart outside, there was a loud knock on the door. Agnes paced to the door and found herself face to face with Meta and Darius, their eyes blazing with anger. "Where is she?" Meta demanded, her words slurring slightly. "You kidnapped our daughter!" Agnes felt her heart drop as she saw Maya standing behind her parents, looking conflicted and scared. The girl's eyes met Agnes's briefly before darting away. "We didn't kidnap anyone," Agnes protested, her voice shaking. "We were just trying to help." "Help?" Darius sneered. "By stealing a child from her family? That's a crime, lady. Maya, tell us, did this lady kidnap you?" Maya, seemingly torn between her loyalty to her parents and the kindness she had received from Agnes and Rowan, hesitantly spoke up. They took me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Agnes felt as if she'd been punched in the gut. The betrayal stung, even as a part of her understood the complicated dynamics at play. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, began to gather on the street, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Rowan, having had enough of the situation, stepped forward. "That's it," he said firmly. "I'm calling the police. Let them sort this out." As Rowan reached for his phone, Meta and Darius exchanged a panicked look. Meta's facade crumbled instantly. "Take her," she yelled, her face contorting with a mixture of rage and desperation. "I don't want her. I ain't dealing with police because of her." Without another word, they turned and bolted down the street, leaving Maya standing alone on the porch. The girl looked up at Agnes, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do. Mum was drunk and got angry at me. She forced me to make use of your kindness, to get into your home and act like you'd kidnapped me. They wanted the money and I was just so hungry, ma'am. I haven't eaten properly in days, except for what I could find in the trash bin and what you served earlier." Agnes knelt beside her, pushing aside her own hurt feelings. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to figure this out." Within minutes, police sirens could be heard approaching. As the officers arrived, Agnes gently encouraged Maya to tell them the truth. "Please, Maya," she said softly, "the police are here to help. Tell them what's really been happening." Maya, trembling slightly, nodded. As the officers questioned her, she slowly began to open up. She told them about her mother's boyfriend, how they had been living in a camper, and how she was often left alone to fend for herself. "Can you show us where this camper is?" one of the officers asked gently. Maya nodded, and soon they were all making their way to the camper park, the police, Maya, Agnes, and Rowan. The area was dimly lit, with a few scattered streetlights casting long shadows across the rows of parked campers and RVs. The air was thick with tension as they rushed through the park. Maya pointed to a battered off-white camper van near the back of the lot. "That's it," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. As they approached the area, they spotted Meta and Darius attempting to flee in their camper van. The police officers took the lead, with Agnes, Rowan, and Maya following closely behind. As they neared the vehicle, they could hear muffled voices and the sound of things being hastily moved around inside. Suddenly, the camper's engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. "They're trying to escape," one of the officers shouted, breaking into a run. The camper lurched forward, tires spinning in the snow. Agnes instinctively pulled Maya close, shielding her from the scene before them. Rowan stood protectively in front of both of them, his body tense. The police reacted swiftly. One officer positioned his patrol car to block the camper's path, while the other drew his weapon, shouting commands for the occupants to stop and exit the vehicle. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed Meta and Darius might attempt to ram through the blockade. The camper's engine revved aggressively, but then suddenly cut out. "Exit the vehicle with your hands up," an officer commanded, his voice firm and authoritative. The camper's door swung open. Darius emerged first, his hands raised, a look of defeat on his face. Meta followed, stumbling slightly as she stepped down from the camper, her eyes wild with a mixture of anger and fear. As the officers moved in to handcuff them, Meta's gaze locked onto Maya. "This is all a misunderstanding. We were looking for our daughter and got a bit worried." The officer's eyes narrowed, clearly not buying the sudden change in demeanor. "Your daughter's here and she admitted you abandoned her care. We're going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions," he said firmly. Darius spat and Meta pointed her fingers at Agnes and Rowan. "Cursed you all, and you, child, I wish you grow up sick and no one to care for you." Agnes closed Maya's ears and buried her closer to her chest before she could hear any more of it. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," one of the officers said firmly, securing the handcuffs on the couple's hands. "I suggest you use it." While one officer read Meta and Darius their rights and escorted them to the car, another approached Agnes, Rowan and Maya. "We'll need statements from all of you, so please come to the station with us," he said, his tone now gentler. "As for Maya, child services will be involved to ensure her care. It's clear she's suffered from neglect and malnourishment, which explains the swelling in her belly. A more thorough investigation will follow, but for now, her safety is our top priority." "What's going to happen to me?" Maya asked in a small voice. Agnes knelt at Maya's level, her voice gentle. "We're going to make sure you're safe and taken care of, Maya. For tonight, you and I will come with the police. The child service will be there and take you to a special home where children stay when they need a safe place." Maya's lower lip trembled, and she looked at Agnes and Rowan with pleading eyes. "Can't I stay here with you? You've been nice to me. I'm sorry for lying to you. I can be a good girl." Agnes felt tears pricking at her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, kneeling next to Maya. "We would love for you to stay with us, but some rules need to be followed to make sure you're safe. The police need to do their jobs to protect you, but I promise you we'll do everything we can to see you again soon." Rowan nodded, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. "Yes, of course, our house has many empty rooms now." As Agnes, Rowan and Maya settled in the car, Agnes felt Rowan's arm around her shoulders. "We did the right thing and we'll do whatever it takes to help her." Rowan nodded. "It's just not how I expected our Christmas to go. You're always full of surprises, Agnes. Never failed me even in our old age." Agnes chuckled softly. "You married me for all the right reasons. But maybe this is exactly what we needed. Our children are all grown up, and we can make room for the community." As the cars drove away, the decorative Christmas lights of the neighborhood faded into the distance. This Christmas might not have been the one they expected, but it had become one they would never forget. A Christmas of compassion, of action, and of hope for a brighter future, not just for Maya, but for themselves as well.